good morning. Come to attention, please. And you haven't even been drinking yet. So, I know I lose control of you as the wine tasting goes on. Buongiorno. Welcome to a topic, great topic, that really gets my juices flowing. Italian food today in restaurants in Italy and in Italian restaurants in the U.S. How does one affect the other? We have some great speakers here to serve up this minestrone of ideas. To my left, we have Lydia Bastianich, rock star chef, restaurateur, author, TV personality. To the left of Lydia, we have Maurizio Forte, who is the Italian Trade Commissioner, Executive Director of the Italian Trade Commission in the U.S., lives in New York. We have to his left, is that you there, Daniele? Daniele Cernili, who is also known as Dr. Vino or Dr. Wine. He is the publisher of the publication Dr. Vino. He lives, lucky man, in Roma. Next we have Dino Bordi, who is the international head buyer for, a little store you might have heard of called Eataly. And lastly, we have Ian D'Agata, who is the scientific director of the Vinitaly International Academy. And as you might guess, where does he live? Go ahead, take a guess. Vinitaly. Yes, he lives in fair Verona, a city that I like to go to all the time. So just to get the ball of mozzarella rolling. There's the first issue. Is it mozzarella or is it, as you say in New York, mozzarella? Okay. I have two parallel streams of discussion. And I'm just going to stake out this territory, then I'm going to pass it on to Maurizio and the others, and everybody's going to just make a fairly brief statement about their feelings on the subject, and then we'll talk amongst ourselves, and then we'll take some questions from you. So the two streams that I'm bringing up today are regionality and creativity. Regionality first. As you know, in the 19th century, Italy was all regions. There was no Italy united until finally 1870. This regional autonomy obviously had a great effect on food. Every region was distinct. But as Italy grew into one country, this changed. Regionality is still very important in Italy, no doubt about it. But it's not rigid like it once was. You can easily find dried pasta with red sauce in Milano, and you can easily find risotto in Palermo. Intriguingly, the flow in America has been in the opposite direction. The real beginning of Italian food in America, of course, was circa 1900 with the flow of immigrants from southern Italy, mostly Naples area. We all know the kind of cooking these immigrants came up with. We call it Italian-American. It dominated, quote, Italian food in America for 100 years, and it's still important today. So think back, no, not many of you can think back to this date, but imagine in 1945, try to find a Venetian restaurant in the US. Impossible. Try to find it today, or food from Emilia-Romagna, or food from Sicily, or from Piemonte. It's all very possible today. We'll discuss that. The other stream, briefly, is creativity. This story starts in the 1970s. Italians in Italy were happily cooking their ossobuco in Milano, their amatriciana in Roma, when news arrived of big changes in France. Paul Bocuse is suddenly on the cover of Time magazine, and a highly creative reaction to traditional French cooking is born. Nouvelle cuisine. Not wanting to miss out on a good thing, Italian chefs of the 1970s and 1980s in Italy started innovating. No more pasta, proclaims Marchesi, etc., etc. But a funny thing happened on the way to the Villeroy and Bosch. The world, so in love with traditional Italian food, did not embrace Italian creative efforts in the same way the world embrace French creative efforts, or 20 years later, Spanish creative efforts. From my point of view, in Italy, they're still grappling with this issue. Here, however, in America, in the, quote, land of the free, American chefs go run amok. They're doing pretty much whatever they want to do in the name of Italian food. Whither are we drifting, and how is one affecting the other? This panel will try to pull it all together for us today. So we start with Maurizio Forte, who is the Italian Trade Commissioner in the U.S. Maurizio.
Thank you very much, David. Lydia, I'm very jealous. I hope one day to be a rock star Italian Trade Commissioner. I don't know if this category exists in the Italian institutions, but I dream of that.
Maurizio, I call myself pot star, not rock star. I'm a pot star.
There is a very bright American businessman. He's called Jack Mitchell. He works in the fashion industry, and he has found a network of stores called Mitchell Stores that are mainly dealing with Italian fashion, that years ago wrote a book that is still quite successful. He sold something like 300,000 copies, called Hug Your Customers, because in his business he wants, of course, to express the attention that everybody must have for its own clients and customers. Well, I want to rephrase it a little bit, and the first statement of the day for me is hug the Italian producers. If we are here, and I think you deserve an applause for them, because if we are here talking about Italian wines after centuries and after the decades of the big renaissance of our wine, is because of you. It's because there are these brave, I say brave because you are mainly small producers that nevertheless are capable to go around the world, export wines almost everywhere, being very aggressive, being capable to spread the knowledge and the culture of Italian wine throughout the world. If the institutions, starting from the Italian Trade Commission and all our partners, we are here and we try to support your job, is because you have done an excellent job throughout the years, and so you deserve all our attention, all our support. I'm not an expert about wine. I'm not an expert about restaurants, but of course, I think there is one point that David just touched in his speech, that is tradition, culture, and regions. Italy is a unified country since 155 years. We are proud of that. We are absolutely one nation, but when it comes to culture, territories, food, and wine, we like to become again a country done of regions and different areas where you're going to have big differences in tradition, in food, and in wine. This is a big richness we have, and we don't want to lose that. And I think that this tradition must be brought into the restaurant business. Otherwise, it's very easy to become international, become fusion, become flat, with no personality, and all the trends and all the fashion can be the same all over the world. Of course, customers are changing, the attention to calories, to organic products, to OGM-free and things like that are changing the way of customers are approaching the restaurants and are even cooking at home. But tradition and a very strong relation with different regions, different products, and different wines, in my opinion, and this is what we are even seeing here in the US market, is still a winning point, and we have to preserve, we have to support, and we have to spread these values around the world. Thank you again to the Italian producers, of course, all the American importers, journalists, and wine friends that are here with us today, and of course a big thank to the speakers that will be the essence of today's seminar. Thank you very much for being here, and I wish all of you 2 profitable days of meetings and business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurizio. So now we're on to the rest of the panel. And panel members, it's your choice. There are microphones in front of you if you'd like to speak sitting down or speak standing up. It's up to you. I wanted to, I've already introduced everyone, but I just wanted to say a special word about Lidia Bastianic, who is an old friend of mine. And I used to interview Lidia, you probably remember these days, on Lidia on the Food Network. I had a show where we would interview chefs every day. And Lidia was there quite a few times. This is 20 years ago. Now, they had, of course, a very busy kitchen at the Food Network, and there were always leftovers from chefs in the kitchen. And the leftovers would sometimes go to the Salvation Army and other food banks and things like that. Not when Lidia was there. When Lidia was there, everyone in the whole place, in the whole building knew that Lidia was there, and they'd descend on the kitchen and gobble up her leftovers and whatever she had touched in the kitchen. I just want to tell you, I did this myself many times. There are a few chefs that you get to know in your life who like touch food and it tastes better. Lidia is the leader of that pack. So, Lidia Bastianic.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Maurizio. Thank you all for being here. It's my pleasure to have been invited. And the subject is a subject that's dear and close to my heart. I have been in America in the Italian restaurant business since 1971, then 40 years and plus. And it is absolutely necessary for me to go periodically back to Italy to research, to refresh my own information so that I can bring the authenticity of what is happening in Italy to America. And I go there 4 or 5 times a year. Inevitably, I look at the stores. What does the common Italian cook and eat at home? And of course, in the restaurants, what are the restaurant trends? According to Nielsen research, Italians, of course, are living faster and home eating faster as well. Italian eating, that's at home. I'll get to the restaurants. Frozen food in the Italian home, in the Italian markets, have gone up by 65%. Packaged sliced meats have gone up by 23%. And to-go food has gone up by 20%. These are Nielsen's research in 2015. And they did specify that north of Italy was more the culprit of this increase than south of Italy. So what happens is that, of course, northern Italy, more industrial, more fast, and so on, moving on. Due to the economical situation as well, Italians are eating less out. But Italians are ever more aware of healthy and naturals, natural foods, that is. Again, Nielsen consensus, meats are down 7% in Italy, but vegetable-based products are up 28% in Italy. 14% of Italians now buy organic, natural products on a weekly basis. So there's a great consciousness, not unlike there is in America. So on that sense, it is parallel. What I found funny is that the one phenomenon that has no nutritional impact is the increase of 130% of Italian, that is from 5 years ago, using their cialde to drink the coffee instead of the mocha. Even though the mocha is 5 times less expensive than each cialda, the increase in that is 130%. Not unlike here in America. I guess the Americans are taking that because everybody now has a little espresso machine and the cialda goes in, and so it is in Italy. So that was quite interesting. The restaurants. So Italy has 360 Michelin stars. So it is well into the high end. Although the regular Italian is eating less out, is eating more fast food, not unlike America. But the fast food in Italy, I must say, in the trattorias, in the osterias, is much more conscious of health and, of course, of the Italian traditions. What is the difference? These Italian chefs, 360 stars, you know, the Italian starred stellato chef has a challenge in front of him, because mostly in every household there's a grandmother or a mother that can make a delicious pasta e fagioli. So why should you go and pay 26 euro to a starred chef for your pasta e fagioli? So the pressure on the Italian stellati chef is tremendous to be creative and to invent new things. The one thing that every single stellato chefs that I have spoken to insist is that their inventions is based and respects Italian traditions. So they will take a pasta e fagioli and, like Massimo Bottura or La Francescana, will puree, will make a gelatin out of it, will make a mousse or whatever of that pasta e fagioli. But still, the flavors at the end of the day are there. Whether you like that kind of innovative cuisine or you prefer a trattoria as an American, that's another story. But it is a great experience, and you have to really give credit to these chefs that are inventing. The Italian cuisine, the normal cuisine, is based from a cuisine at home, cooked at home, that from the roots, that bubbles from the ground up. The Michelin star cuisines are cuisines that come from the minds of these chefs. Two different areas, two different, you know, and I think that in order for food to evolve, for Italy to evolve ever more in the contemporary arena of restaurants, stellati chefs, we need these inventive minds. I just pray to God that they do stay in line with the Italian traditions and that they do respect the Italian traditional products. Because in my 40 years in the restaurant industry, you know, one of the first questions that I ask is, how do you transport, and I'm talking about 1971, how do you transport the culinary history of a people? And that was my challenge in 1971. And what came to mind is, at that time, I had no arborio rice, no grana padano, no prosciutto di Parma, and very limited wines and all of that. So how do I capture? To transport a culinary cuisine, there are, I guess, 3 elements that I found. One of them is the traditional products. So if you put on the plate 2 slices of prosciutto di Parma, a few clusters of grana padano, and a drizzle of balsamico tradizionale, you can be in Kansas, anywhere in the United States, you will taste Italy. So it is very important that the American people, that the American new chefs understand that the Italian traditional product is at the base of the flavor. Now, in 1971, as I said, I didn't have all of that selection of the traditional products. I had the techniques. So it's the product, it's the techniques. So I cooked a lot of sauces, guazzettos, a lot of soups in those things, polenta from Quaker's cornmeal, mind you, but it was good. Was good. The polenta was good in 1971. So, and then there is, of course, the passion and the understanding and the transporting of the Italian feel, the passion for food and the Italian regionality. As far as wine, for me, you know, they always ask me, as a child grew up, there was always wine on the table. Wine is food for me. And as children, you know, we drank bevanda, a little bit of water with a little bit of wine, and that was our drink. No Coca-Cola, none of that stuff. Wine, Italian wine, and it was, I think I read an article in the Wine Enthusiast that says, if you want excitement in wine, go to Italy. So the regionality, the new of the South, of the Trentino in the North is creating really a great opportunity for Italian wines to be part of everybody's table and expand ever more. I'm going to finish in a minute. Italy is the #1 producer of wine. It is the #1 exporter of wine in America. Think about America. 12% of America drinks wine. There's 88% yet to conquer. I'm not saying we should conquer it all, but there's an awful lot to be done yet. So it is, with my pleasure that I share this, and I will say some more things. I certainly have enough to say more, but I would like to share the microphone with the other guests.
We'll get back to you. More Lydia in a moment, because we'll be chatting about all these things. But your fundamental point is so well taken. Italian products, keep it at the heart of Italian food. I remember when Felidia was at its great heyday in New York. The prosciutto di Parma was still banned in the U.S. until about 1990. So what did Lydia do? She made prosciutto on Long Island. That was a visionary thing to do. So now we're going to move on to the man just to the left of Maurizio, my left, and that is Daniele Trinili, who is also known as Dr. Vino.
Thank you. Thank you, David. The first thing is I have to apologize myself for my English. English is not my language, and my English is very far to be perfect. About the topics, I agree with Lydia on several ideas. But in Italy, it's difficult to let understand what Italy is to people that doesn't know the Italian tradition or the Italian history, because we are a little people, a little nation, 2,000 miles. In these 2,000 miles, there are the differences that normally are in 10,000 miles. The northern people, the people of Trentino and Alto Adige, Südtirol, they are very close to the German people. The southern people in Sicilia, the Isle of Lampedusa, is on the African platform. There are really deep differences between, for example, for a Milanese, the Napolitan cuisine is an ethnic cuisine. It's not very understood as local or Italian cuisine. Yes, there is the pizza, of course, everywhere, like in the States is the same. But the pizza in Milan is like a pizza in New York. It's not different like the idea or the sensibility of the people. The creative cuisine for a lot of people, the great majority of the people, is a cuisine for rich and posh people with few food in the dish and lot expensive. We don't. The normal people in Italy doesn't like the creative cuisine. It's too intellectual, too artistic. There are a lot of great chefs, Bottura, for example, and some others, but they have only a little part of the customer that understands really what they are doing. So a cultural cuisine in some way. About the regional cuisine is a great topic for the Italian family, for the Italian people. There are a lot of discussion about the recipes, if you make the matriciana with onions or not, for example. Without, of course. But yes, but I'm Roman too, and I cook the matriciana without onions. But for example, the stuffing of the tortellini change in each part of Emilia. In Bologna there is mortadella, in Modena there is not mortadella. In Reggio Emilia there is boiled meat with parmesan. Tortellini is always tortellini, but different in 20 kilometers change the world. The fruit mustard, for example, in Mantua is only with apples. In Cremona there are all the fruits. The pasta e fagioli is very different, the pasta e fagioli in Naples or in Rome or in Florence or in Venice. They all things to cook pasta e fagioli. But for me, the pasta e fagioli of Venice is not pasta e fagioli. It's a strange recipe. No? So this is strange, it's not for my taste. Because they cook the white beans, not the borlotti beans. And I like borlotti beans. I like hot pasta e fagioli. I put chili inside. In Venice, not. They put probably some onions and some sweet food. I don't know. Different. I don't like it. No? And olive oil for me and butter in Lombardy, for example, it's very different. So different to understand what is the tendency. The tendency is to, as Lydia said, to respect the tradition of our grandmother, for example, and to change something to let the recipe a little lighter. No? So let a little, the style, the technique of cuisine is improving, not only in the creative chefs, but I think in all the restaurants, the technique of cuisine is better now. The attention to the ingredients is fundamental. Bocuse invented the nouvelle cuisine in France. The Italian cuisine is a natural nouvelle cuisine because it's a market cuisine everywhere. We have a green market everywhere, more than the supermarket in some part of Italy, in the south, for example. There are some great supermarkets, very important. One is also in New York, that is Italy, by Farinetti and Bastianic. In Bari, in the south, Italy had no success because they go to the green markets. They don't need any great supermarket because of the green markets and the farmers that give to the customer directly the oranges, the vegetables. And this is the cuisine of of course, the restaurants, there are many trattorias, they are normally market cuisine because they cook what they buy in the green markets. So this is the situation and the idea. What is changing? What is changing in the wine is changing something because the quality of the wines are improving dramatically in the last 20 years. The enologists are fantastic in Italy, and we are very close to the French now. The great French wine are fantastic, of course, but we have some great wines too. And the restaurants, they are not like the French restaurant, very posh and expensive. There are some of them, of course, but in my idea, they are new trattoria styled restaurant. So is the new wave of the new style of the old trattorias, and this is now the tendency. The new restaurants that are opening all over Italy, they are very similar to the ancient trattoria, but with better service, better list of wine, better technique of cuisine, the same attention with the ingredients. This is the idea and the situation in my country. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Vino. That's actually very comforting to know that the spirit of the old trattoria lives. Now we're going to move on to Dino Bori, who is the international head buyer of the very store we've been discussing, Italy. Dino, please.
Good morning, everybody. I apologize also about my English. My English is not perfect. But I think it's charming. That is what the people say. It's charming. You know why it's charming? Because it's cool to be Italian. That is something that's changed in 30, 40 years. Lydia is an example. When she moved here like a lot of years ago, to be Italian was not something to be proud, or to be proud but was hard to communicate. Now, every day when I wake up, I say, we have to sell. What we have to sell? We have to sell what we are. We have to sell our lifestyle. Like what Daniele say, everybody knows Italia. Everybody wanna live like us. And that's is something that we have to sell abroad, Italy. If you think about that, in the past we went all together like to sell door by door what we were producing, and we never thought to go together and be together and then teach, train, communicate our biodiversity. Our biodiversity is our power. I say that because, as you know, a few years ago, 6 years ago, the founder of Italy, Mr. Oscar Farinetti, with Lydia and Joe, they create a place in New York. The idea was so simple. Let's put in one place all the best production of the Italian food and wine. And doesn't mean only the highest quality, but every quality. We are known in the world, and even in the restaurant, to be the producer of the higher quality for the better price. It's easy, like only buy the best. It's not so easy to find the best quality for the best price. And right now, if we talk about the restaurant, in every place that you go in New York, I'm not talking about the ethnic restaurant like Chinese or Indian, but in every other restaurant, you find one or two kinds of pasta. When you go right now in an American restaurant, there is always a pasta. The wine list, it's full of Italian wine, even more than the French wine. Why that? I tell you why. Because there is a better story around our products. To be a waiter, to be a chef, every time that you say, I use this ingredient because this ingredient have something around. You can say, I went in Italy, I find this little producer, I find this winemaker that's created something that was close to disappear. And this is also thanks to Daniele and Carlo Petrini. That's more than 20 years ago, they started like to talk about that. There was a different world. But even 10 years ago was not possible to find some ingredients to use in the American cuisine. Think about colatura di alici. Right now, everybody are using colatura di alici. But even in Italian, some of us, we don't know how to use colatura di alici. But because of Lydia, 10, 15 years ago, came with a colatura di alici in the bag and went in a show in a Food Network or something like that. Lydia, correct me. But now you can find importer, distributor, they are doing that. They are importing those products, and the chefs are able to use in their own kitchen. But again, our power is be together, work together to sell Italia. Then everybody from the north to the south, we are going to sell our biodiversity. You know, we are 60 million in the world, but 60 million in Italy, but 6 billion in the world. But we have the highest biodiversity, one of the highest biodiversity in the world. And what is tradition, what is not tradition? Tradition is something that's after year became a tradition. Every time that I say, look guys, in our Italian cuisine, the most traditional things are pasta and pizza. 500 years ago, we didn't have tomato. Tomato is coming from United States. When Cristoforo Colombo discovered tomato, became traditional in Italy. And I think that now the new wave in the restaurant is to use the better ingredients as possible. Of course, it's better to use Italian products when it's possible, but we have to use and sell our lifestyle. And this is why we are here, to show the beauty of our country. Thank you so much.
Grazie, Dino. The last speaker on the panel, and then we're going to have a little talk amongst ourselves, is Ian D'Agata, who is the scientific director of the Vin Italy International Academy in Verona. Ian, please.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I have to say thank you to the Italian Trade Commission and the Commissioner, Maurizio Forte, and the Ministry for the Economic Development in Italy. It's a real honor to be here. It's fantastic to be in such a great salon talking about Italian wine. Just think how far we've come. I think Lydia would be able to tell you that many, many years ago it was very different for Italian wine. And now we're reveling in a beautiful ambience with lots of interest and lots of sales. Italian food and wine are in a state of continuous flux. The amount of food that we're consuming really hasn't changed over the last 20 years. The amount of wine has decreased per capita, but it is also true that the quality of that wine has increased. What has changed are some of the types of foods and wines we eat and drink. The habits themselves haven't changed. The average Italian has 21 different food shops they go to in a year. Of those 21 food shops, only 6 are supermarkets. I'm a very good example. I live in Rome too. This is not a Rome musketeer thing here, the three of us. But I have my fish shop. I have my meat shop. I have my bread shop. I go to a place just for fruit and vegetables. And I'll go to the supermarket too, but that's when I'm in a rush. So that's very typical of the way Italians tend to buy food and wine. The trends change because society changes and it responds to fluxes in economy and fads in fashion. Certainly, everything that Lydia told us is true, and it's very, very interesting. There has been an increase over the last 30 years in the consumption of vegetables in Italy, about 20% increase in the daily diet of Italians in vegetable consumptions. And in fact, that increase in frozen foods that Lydia mentioned is mainly vegetables. Nobody wants to peel potatoes anymore. Nobody wants to cut a salad anymore. They just buy it, ready to go. We have decreased meat consumption. That's in part also because of economic difficulties in the last few years. In fact, though meat consumption has decreased by 7%, white meats have increased considerably because they're less expensive than red meats, and also because they're healthier. And very appropriately, Lydia was mentioning the wellness factor. In Italy, we're very, very aware of healthy lifestyles. Italy is a crazy country. You've got to know that we have by far the most gyms in Europe. We have over 16,000 gyms in Europe. So we're very much aware of that. And pesce azzurro, a huge increase in the eating of sardines and anchovies in Italy, because yes, they are less expensive. You know, a kilo of pesce azzurro will go anywhere from 5 to 7 euros a kilo in most Roman shops, while branzino, which is spigola, which is the white sea bass, usually all farmed anyway, so I'd avoid it, is 15 to 20 euros a kilo. So we're consuming more pesce azzurro. It's cheaper and it's healthier. And Italians are very, very aware of that. We're also more into gourmet snacking. There's been a real change in the Italian food industry in the snacks they prepare. We're becoming more and more acquainted with gourmet snacks. An example, which is not Italian, is potato chips. Italy had probably the worst potato chips in the world. I mean, you guys in the States are blessed. You've got 74 different varieties of potato chips, from sour cream and onion, bacon, hickory smoke, whatever. In Italy, they were horrible. Now, we've got great potato chips. They're importing them from England. Carlo Cracco is doing things with San Carlo, which is a potato industry in Italy. So that has changed. Gourmet snacks are becoming very, very important. E-commerce is becoming very important in Italy. Just to give you a perspective, Italians operate online when it comes to buying stuff increasingly every year. There's about a 14% increase in economic transactions done via the internet. It's about a 14 billion euro business, so it's not a small sum of change. Of that, 23% rise yearly is in agroalimentary products, food and wine. That's still very low with respect to Europe, because Italians operate, roughly 6% of Italians buy off the internet wine and food, as compared to the rest of Europe, which is at 16%. But Italians are the ones in Europe who stay connected the most. We spend over 6 hours a day connected. So there's a huge margin of growth in that sector when it comes to wine and food in Italy. There's a lot more things I could say, but clearly we want to open up the discussion here with all these esteemed guests. The last thing I want to say is on wine, of course, because that's my life. I am the scientific director of Vinitaly. I'm also the contributing editor for Decanter, and I take care of Central Italy, Southern Italy, Alsace, Bordeaux, and Canada for Antonio Galloni and his newsletter, Vinous. Wine is my life. I've dedicated it to it. Italy is blessed. We're the biggest world's producer of wine. We're the biggest exporter. Lydia's already told us that. We produce about as much wine today as we did 10 years ago. Nothing's changed. It's about 49 million hectoliters. It was 48 in 2005. Now, that maybe doesn't mean much to you, so let me put it into perspective. 18% of all the bottles of wine in the world are of Italian wine. 28% of all European, all bottles of wine, 28% sold in Europe are of Italian wine. So we're a powerhouse when it comes to wine. We are the world's #1 country when it comes to native grapes. We have about 548 different grape varieties that have been identified genetically. You've got to consider, I repeat, 548, and most university experts believe there's close to 1,000, so there's another 500 awaiting genetic identification. 90% of all French wines are made from 15 grape varieties. 90% of all California wines are made from 8 grape varieties. Italy is throwing over 600 grape varieties at least at you. That's a huge wealth. It helps us all. Now the key then becomes to broadcast, to explain this wealth, because otherwise it becomes a matter of confusion. Like we all know and understand that there is a prosciutto di Parma, that there is a prosciutto di San Daniele, that there is a prosciutto di Sauris, that there is a prosciutto di Boss, that's in Val d'Aosta, near the border with France. As we realize that there are all these types of prosciuttos, we just have to start understanding and helping people understand that the Greco of Calabria is a different variety than the Greco of Campania, that we have 17 different Malvasia varieties, and unless we get people to understand that, unless we get people to believe in that, then it makes no sense. Because when you buy a Malvasia wine in Italy, Malvasia, by the way, does not exist. Neither does Trebbiano, because there are 17 different Malvasia varieties. There are 8 different Trebbianos. If you don't know that, the Malvasia wines in Italy can be white, they can be red, they can be dry, they can be sweet, they can be sparkling, they can be still. So you have to know what you're buying, and that helps our producers sell their products, get ahead in life, and become wealthier, be able to invest more, and grow. All in all, Italy is blessed. It's a beautiful country with very creative, very hopefully intelligent and hardworking people. I'm very proud to be Italian. I'm very proud to be here today to talk about Italian food and wine. And if I can help you in any way enjoy it more, you'll just make me happy. Thank you.
Excellent, Ian. Thank you so much. You know, the grape variety detail that blew me away, I learned this within the last 5 years because I started to import Lambrusco, among other things. What's the grape of Lambrusco? There are 60 possible grapes behind the wines called Lambrusco. 60, 6-0. Astonishing. I just wanted to remind you that there will be a lunch for this crowd at 1 o'clock, and it's going to be one floor down. What's the name of it? Regent in Sutton South at 1 p.m. All right, we're going to start with Maurizio. He's got a few things he wants to tell you, then maybe you can get the ball rolling on this discussion.
Yes, thank you, David. There are some key words about what the speakers have just told you. There is, of course, tradition, innovation. There is a very nice sentence wrote by an American journalist, Edward Steinberg, writing a book about an Italian great winemaker. I don't mention the name, but maybe some of you know. Yeah. And he said that a tradition is an innovation that has been successful. So it means that today what we are doing as an innovation in a few years can become a tradition. But apart of that, it seems that a key word that we have heard many times today is authenticity. And this brings me to the biggest promotion campaign that Italy and the Italian government has ever done in the US market. This is the ongoing campaign that is both advertisement and on TV, digital media, printed media, and the cooperation with the most important retailers throughout the US market. You can see the commercial on the big screens here has been directed by Silvio Muccino, and the claim is buy authentic Italian products, get more. We want to underline the word authentic because from the survey we have done, we discovered that more than 50% of the American consumer do not have any idea about the so-called Italian sounding. We don't want to do any war against anybody, but if there is the Parmigiano Reggiano that is made in a specific area, this must be Italian. If you want to call Parmesan something else, it seems according to the law you can do here, but this is not authentic. So we want to underline this. Also because according to the same research, 50% of the Americans are ready to pay an extra price in order to have authentic Italian food that is often connected to health, to origin, to close to nature. So this is very important. This is the biggest campaign. It's financed by the Ministry of Economic Development. It's ongoing now in the US. You can even, if I say to the Italian producers, if you go to Times Square, you can see around some billboards about this advertisement. So buy authentic Italian, get more. This is really the claim that we want to repeat millions of times in these days.
About Parmigiano Reggiano, I've been there quite a few times and always speaking to the cheesemakers there. They say, as a point of pride, not one of us, not once, has ever contributed anything to what goes in the green can in America. And I sure believe them. You know, actually the ideas about America have been implicit and explicit in the talks that we heard today. Let me drive to a big point. Who's influencing whom more these days? Americans influencing restaurants in Italy or Italian restaurants in Italy influencing America? America can sometimes have an effect on ethnic foods in other countries. I think of our recent embrace of sushi in the last 25, 30 years. They never had avocados in Japanese sushi bars in Japan. Now they have avocados. They never had California rolls. Now they have California rolls. So whoever wants to pick up on this, what do you think has been an American contribution to food in Italy? And is it taking, is it growing, or in the future will we see even more Italian contributions to Italian food in America?
Okay. Well, I think that let's go to the shorter one because the Italian influence on America is exponential, if we will, in the food line. But I think that Italy is looking to America for all these sort of new moving forward health issue, eating balanced, eating the vegetables and importing vegetables. And they're also into ethnicity, ethnic food. But there's one thing I think Massimo Bottura once said, you don't touch an Italian's soccer team or his grandmother's cooking. So that's sacred. So they still, you know, go back to the basics, but I think they're open to the new world. But it's no news that Italian food is the #1 ethnic food in America. And if we look at the fast food restaurants opening, more than 70% have an Italian-based menu. There's Italian food on the menu. I think that what you're doing, Maurizio, and Italy, this promotion is absolutely what's needed. Americans are eager to learn, to understand, especially with the social media and the electronics messages now ever more. That's the way they will know what is the difference between a tradizionale, really Reggiano Parmigiano, and the green can. And that has to spread on a really, like they're doing the Caucasus now, on a really basic level, touch people. So in the stores, I know you're doing promotion in the stores, on the ground promotion and messages. As far as, so once the American is into and has an opportunity to learn and to taste, Americans will. Television is a great venue. As far as restaurants on a certain level, we need to talk to the chefs. And then I say, every time I go out and eat, and no matter what restaurant, I look on the menu for Italian products. And whether a restaurant is Japanese to some extent, or American or whatever, there's always Italian elements that I find in the name, in the products used and whatever. This is very encouraging because the #2 export industry of Italy is the agroalimentare. So it's the second largest export and source of revenues for Italy. And it warrants it because of its great products. But if we're going to go to restaurants at a certain level, how is it coming, the information from Italy to these great chefs? Now, let me just mention that education again there, and the exposure, and the understanding, and the tasting and understanding of the culture. Because if you're going to cook a people's culture, you need to be there. You need to be in situ at some point. Marea, Michael White, he spent 3 years at San Domenico. Del Posto.
In Italy. San Domenico in Italy.
Yes, San Domenico in Italy. Del Posto, Mark Landner, in Emilia-Romagna, spent 2 years. Bartolotta from Ristorante di Mare Las Vegas. Locanda dell'Angelo at Paracucchi, he spent 2 years there. Mario Batali, one of ours, he spent 2 years in Emilia-Romagna in a restaurant. Torrisi, Mario Carbone, he spent time in La Dogana in Tuscany. These are some of the key chefs that profess the Italian cuisine out there. They have all been to Italy and spent. So again, and we had this discussion, the culinary schools, the new students, bringing them to Italy, bringing the Italian chefs, because 40 years of this industry, several restaurants, there is no Italian chefs that are immigrating. I happen to have, I think at Felidia Fortunato Nicotra, who's Sicilian, but that's a rare find. A rare find. So we have to train these new chefs. We take on the job, but we need a good raw product, a good starting product. So it is extremely important. So the good Italian restaurants, yes, these chefs all have their take, all had experience in Italy, and it is imperative that we make these opportunities available for young American chefs to go to Italy. So what are some of the foods that are coming in? And Dino, you can help me, you know, that you're most likely are going to see in the restaurants. Of course, the bergamotto, which is that wonderful aromatic lemon from Calabria. There is the Vacca Rossa, the different cheeses. Now, Parmigiano Reggiano, Grana Padano is about the aging of the cheeses. So 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, but also single varietal, the milk of a single cow, the Vacca Rossa, which is extraordinary. Colatura di Alici. Nanduia is another one from Calabria. Nanduia is a spread, if you will, of pork fat and meat and lots of peperoncino. It's a red spread because it is wonderful. It is really gets all your circulation going, but it is great to either spread but add to a sauce or add to a
natural Viagra.
Exactly. It opens up the capillaries. That's what it does. So it's good. Another in the technique, the pizza. I mean, pizza has taken off. One would say it's an American product, but what's coming is, and what's important to a Neapolitan is that that dough ferments for 24 hours. A slow fermentation, low temperature, that is coming ever more into. So when you have that pizza, you can ask, Is it fermented for 24 hours? That makes the digestibility much easier because it breaks down the gluten, the proteins, and you digest it more readily. So you will be seeing that more and more. And of course, the culatello, I think, just got the okay to come in. The culatello is the center muscle of the prosciutto, of the hind leg. And it is cured like a prosciutto, and it is extraordinary. Dino, do you have anything to add to any other products that were? Yeah? I hit them all? Okay, so look for those products.
I think what we can say is much the same in wine. Everything that Lydia said about food and food products, in many respects, also has to do with wine. I was in San Francisco just a few weeks ago, ate at A16, which is Shelley Lindgren's restaurant, won the James Beard Award, Best Wine List, and it's entirely devoted not just to Italian wines, it's entirely devoted to Southern Italian wines. And Giampaolo Petrolini, 1760, and Acquarello has all these unknown little grape varieties on his wine list. Here, of course, in New York, Babbo and Del Posto and Felidia, and many, many other restaurants that Lydia mentioned have wine lists that are extremely impressive, not just for the depth of vintages of Italian wines. If you go to Del Posto, you get a hernia lifting that wine list, and it's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's rich in old vintages, but it's also rich in the wealth of Italian grape varieties, which is and terroirs, DOCs and DOCGs, which is one of the truly great things about Italian wine. And I was introduced as scientific director of the International Wine of the Vinitaly International Academy, and that is also an example of how things change over time. Stevie Kim, who was the managing director of Vinitaly International, had this great idea that in order to help and foster the knowledge of Italian wines, it would be good to create an academy whereby we could teach youngsters about Italian grapes, Italian terroirs, and with the help of ICE, that has been very generous and very forward-thinking in this example as well. We are now helping young somms from all over the world learn more about these grape varieties. They can then go back to their places of origin and broadcast and explain this wealth of grape varieties and wines we have. This year we will have a Master of Wine as one of our students. We have 3 Master Somms. We have the Somm of very famous restaurants here in the States that are going to be attending the 1-week course. And that is one way that we can help broadcast the quality of Italian wines, the complexity, and hopefully make them better understood and easier to appreciate.
Ian,
and it's a continuous growth process.
About Italian wine in America, let me ask you a question. You know, we Americans are strange wine drinkers. The kind of everyday drinking that goes on in a traditional wine culture like Italy, we don't take to that so well. When you hear about wine in America, a lot, you know, you read your Wine Spectator, whatever, a lot of it's about the best Super Tuscans and the best Barolos and Barbarescos and things like that. To me, that's not my kind of wine drinking. I like real wine drinking. I like to drink wine every day, what people drink. Do you think we have a chance in America? I've been spending some time in Piacenza in the last couple of years. Local, simple wines like Gutornio. I love this wine. Do you think that Americans might take to the littler wines?
Oh, absolutely. 1,000, I'm willing to bet you anything, and to some extent it's already happening. I think that everybody loves the big wines, everybody loves the expensive wines, but the fact is that 20, 30 years ago, if you used to go to lunch in a restaurant in North America, people were more likely to be drinking Perrier at lunch than anything else. Now you've got Americans asking for a good breakfast wine, which is great, I think. I think that that is the way of the future. I think you're going to see more and more people here drinking Coda di Volpe, more and more people here drinking Guturnio and Bonarda. They're inexpensive wines, not cheap, they're inexpensive wines. And they're lovely. They're very food friendly. The great thing that maybe we haven't touched upon is Italian wines are usually high acid. They're usually high acid and light. And they go very well with food. We're the country that has 400 different cheeses, you know. We have over 500 different salumis. So you want a high acid wine to go with your meal. to help you get the palate ready for the next morsel. So yes, David, I am 1,000% in agreement with you.
Excellent. And Lydia, I think, has a comment on this as well.
Yes, you know, we still have 80% to conquer there, 80+% to conquer. So there's a lot of work to be done. But you cannot expect a beginner of wine, somebody that wants to taste wine, that wants to begin with a Barolo or an Amarone. You know, the forum is most likely a restaurant or a bar, and on different level of prices. And we have restaurants on all of those levels. And we price and have wines accordingly. And we understand that if somebody comes for the first time and wants to try an Italian wine, first of all, it has to be good. But it doesn't have to be expensive. Because if this person has not developed yet a palate or a library of reference for wine, then those big wines are just going to impede in them getting, it's like a child learning to walk. So those wines that are not expensive, but that are well-made, which is happening in Italy now, are extremely important in the first and second and third step to get those people to drink Italian wines. And I know that we do that by the glass. By the glass is very a great way. And again, education. So the importance of all of you producers continuing to come and trek through our restaurants, talk to our wine sommeliers and all of that is extremely important, because then they communicate to those diners that sit down. So it's education and the diversity of having a wine to start somebody with.
And let me add to that, and this is not to toot Lydia's horn, but a very good example is her Jeff Porter. He's the wine director of the B&B Hospitality Group. He's a fantastically well-trained young man. I can't say enough about how much respect I have for him. He knows more about Italian wine than a lot of Italians, and he lives in New York, and he does work on Italian wine's behalf in New York. So, and there's like him, there's many, many others, and I think that's great. It can only help Italy's wine. It's great for the States. And I tell you, there's fewer places in the world I enjoy eating more than in the US of A.
Italy.
Excuse me.
Let's.
Excuse me. I know a
Yes,
lot
please.
of wine shops in New York, and in the range of $14.99, there is a lot of many good Italian wines. So not so expensive, very affordable. And I think in all the regions there are Barbera and the Chianti Classico, or in the south mainly now. But the quality, the general quality, is very much increased in the last 10 years, because the enology increased, and because the idea of the good wine of the correct wine in the mind of the producer in Italy is more evident now, more evident, and a lot of southern and central producers are very interesting for the medium-low level of the market.
Of course,
of price, of course, not of quality.
Chianti Classico, very popular in America. Of course, me as a wine writer, I'm always pushing people, look at the other Chianti zones also. I'm importing some Colli Senese. It's cheaper and it's generally easier to go with food. So, you know, we all agree, I think. This is the way that we have to go with the market.
The Chianti tout court, the only Chianti, there are a lot of Chianti very, very good and less expensive.
Yeah.
But Chianti Classico is a very important denomination.
Oh, of course.
35 million bottle every year. So
of course.
I want to add only something
Please.
super quick. You know, it's interesting because every time that we talk about food and wine, we talk between each other. We have the 5% of the entire world that we already know. What are we talking about? The real problem is most of the people, the 90% of the people, they don't know the difference between grapes, what is a grape, and they don't know that wine is made by different grapes. That is the real important thing, because we can talk about, this is Super Tuscan, this is this. The people don't know the base. We have to teach the normal customer, not the wine lover. The wine lover already knows something. This is something interesting. In United States, the problem is not, and that is something happening in our stores, the problem is not if the pasta is good or not good, is to boil the water and put the pasta inside. That is the real problem, not in this country, in the world. We are Italian and we've grown up with that, but most of the people don't know the base. They don't know the difference between durum grain and not durum grain. Semolina, that is the real problem, how the people have to be trained and teach, and the young, the child. This is what we have to do in the future.
Yes. I remain hopeful, though. Think of the difference between now and 20 years ago in America. How little we knew then, how much more we know now, but man, there's much more to go, of course. Listen, we're a little bit over time, but I would love to, if anybody's got any burning questions for the panel, I'd love to take one or two right now. I don't see any hands. Oh, come on. There you go. What kind of wine? Keg wine? What's the future of keg wine coming from Italy?
Canned wine?
Keg. In a barrel directly from Italy.
Ah, in Tetra Pak.
Cakes.
But
Dr. Wine.
The Tetra Brick wines into the bagging box or Tetra Brick something. So in Italy there is a phenomenon, the Tavernello, no? 100 million bricks every year, and the most popular wine probably is in brick, is not in bottle, no? And it's produced. It's €1 is one box for a bottle. No? Yes, it's the same in the States, and it's a great, very famous, very popular. The quality is not so high. It's the wine for the normal people, the people that want to have just a glass of wine with no difference.
Yeah.
So this is, but it's very popular.
I like this kind of thing very much. Are there any other questions? Remember, the topic of our panel is how is food changing in Italian restaurants in Italy? How will that affect America? But you can ask anything you like. Did I see a hand tentative? Yes. Go ahead, sir.
I heard you guys talking a lot about tradition and authenticity as branding Italian food and wine, and would like some comments on to what extent these DO laws are enforced and how counterfeiting can be kind of kept in check, because you hear these news articles about olives that aren't from Italy, or these sort of counterfeiting issues in Tuscany and things like that with the wines, and so. Can we get your thoughts on that?
First of all, we discover time to time some counterfeiting on some food frauds because we do a lot of controls. This is the first thing. Some countries, it seems the food is always perfect because basically there are few controls. We have, as you mentioned, this program, we have different police and different corps that are entrusted to check the quality of our food, and they were joking, said that we have the food FBI in Italy. So first, we are not afraid to control, to bring public if something is wrong. Sometimes this is manipulated abroad or even in Italy. And this is mainly the problem, because even some statements and some figures that time to time have been said, like 80% of the olive oil coming from Italy is not a good one. It's completely without any base, any solid figures or fact. This is the first thing. And the second thing is that for some products, and this is absolutely legal, absolutely done in a very transparent way, Italy is not always manufacturing the raw materials, but is sometimes importing the raw materials or importing the semi-finished products and doing some blends. And this is, again, very clearly stated in the bottles, and it's nothing that we have, we have to hide or we have to be afraid of. Then there is another category of products that is the products with the geographical indication. These products must be done absolutely 100% in a specific territory with all the raw materials coming from that territory. like for the wine, for example, or for DOP or EGP or EGT products. And this is another way, is another standard to have a more strict relation between the product and the territory. But again, all over the world, the vocabulary about coffee is Italian: espresso, latte, macchiato, ristretto, lungo, but we don't produce a single bean of coffee. Nevertheless, Italy is the country that has made international the culture of coffee. So we must be clear on that. Some products are strongly rooted to the territory, some others are partially Italian and partially imported and blend. This is clear in the labels, this is clear in all the material. Some frauds come to time, some counterfeiting come to time, can happen as all over the world. We are very carefully, and we want to discover and of course stop this kind of phenomena. And repeat, time to time, there is some kind of manipulation about this kind of news.
I think
I
also,
don't know if somebody else maybe.
yeah, no, I think also, you know, as Dr. Forte was saying, unfortunately, you know, there's a bad apple everywhere. I mean, nobody's a saint. And unfortunately, it's those bad examples that get a lot of press and risk giving a bad name to many, many hardworking people and people who play by the books and by the rules. I think you have to consider the story of wine itself. If you talk to an older gentleman from Sicily, he will tell you that, you know, his big fun when he used to be a child was to go with his grandfather at a time when there wasn't internet, when there wasn't a TV, when there may not have been anything to do, was to go to the port and see the tankers full of Nero d'Avola take off for France and other countries. And so this is part and parcel of the history and the lore of, for example, wine, the food industry. Anthony Hansen is a great Burgundy expert. I remember his story. He told me, you know, when I was younger, I was working at a very famous Burgundy négociant house. It's not important to name. And, you know, I was at the bottling line, and all these bottles were going by of Gevrey Chambertin. And then all of a sudden, I see the bottles start saying Volnay, Volnay, Volnay. Yeah, but it was the same wine.
Yeah.
So, you know, in Italian we say, scagli la prima pietra, chi non ha peccato. And I think it's just human nature. You know, you're always going to find people who want to cut corners. I think Italy does a great job of policing. And I think most Italians are very proud of what they do when it comes to the agroalimentary culture. And I think most people do their best and try hard, and there's always going to be a bad apple or two, and you just can't help that.
Yes, and of course Americans, it's in their nature, the American press, to be always in that Watergate mentality. I mean, I'm just so over that. By the way, there's a great new olive oil from Benghazi. No, I'm just kidding. Let's close, but I'd like to close with, I'm sorry, one more burning question, and then passing to Lydia. Yes?
Good morning. So I'm speaking on behalf of Giovanni Dri, an Italian producer from Friuli Venezia Giulia. And he would like to know what's the future of Italian dessert wines in the US, and if there is space for this kind of wines.
Interesting. Dessert wines from Italy. Who's got the answer?
I can talk about my restaurants, and I think there's some great wines, dessert wines, coming out of Italy, and yours is extraordinary. I mean, I visited you many times. But there is a difficulty in selling dessert wine. Americans, they love their dessert, but dessert and dessert wine is a problem. So if we pair the dessert wine with a cookie, but it takes an effort from the restaurateur, from the sommelier, it needs to be educated, it needs to be implemented on the menu. So if we make combinations of cheese and dessert wine, biscotti and dessert wine, or just a great way when you don't feel like having a whole dessert, have a glass of dessert wine. But it still takes selling effort and continuous education. Americans have a sweet tooth. They love their sweetness, and I think that they will come to it. So keep on doing what you're doing. I see Mr. Israeli, do you have any? Come on. Get up, get up.
Microphone is coming.
Come.
When I was at Windows on the World, we actually put dessert wine on the dessert menu, not on the wine menu.
Exactly.
So it was liquid dessert, and that's how we sold it.
I'll add something to that, and I think it's a very important question. I think it's something that we all have to work very hard on, wine writers, restaurateurs, somms, because it is a problem for a number of reasons. It's actually a very serious and complex matter. For those of you who don't know, Giovanni Dri is a wonderful producer of Picolite and Remandolo, which is made with Verduzzo in Friuli Venezia Giulia. The problem is that, well, first off, I think we have to start thinking of sweet wines not just as dessert wines, but we have to start eating them at the beginning of drinking them at the beginning of a meal and during the meal. That takes a lot of effort. It takes a willingness to do so, but provided sweet wines have acidity, they're not cloying and they're not going to kill your taste buds. And you can definitely start an aperitif with tartlets of gorgonzola or roquefort, of chicken livers, of foie gras, with a sweet wine. In fact, that's what they do in Bordeaux. If you go to Bordeaux, the typical aperitif of a Bordeaux household is either a glass of champagne or a glass of sauternes. That is typical of a Bordeaux household. Now, furthermore, sweet wines such as the ones that Giovanni makes, but many others, will actually match much better than we think with things like pumpkin scoop, roasted butternut squash, scallops, and we just have to get to the point where we do that more regularly. We don't just ghetto these wines at the end of a meal. The other very important reason why we need to do this is because of the alcohol-related issues. Unfortunately, people are now drinking these wines less at the end of the meal because they then got to get into a car and they're worried that they may end up being over the legal limit. So it's really vital that we change or help change eating and drinking habits, or it will be difficult for sweet wines, and not just Italy's. Italy was the second biggest market for Sauterne sales in Europe. Well, it's the fifth for Champagne. And now the Sauterne sales in Italy are dropping because people are worried about that.
But this is the very thing, it seems to me. Italy has a disadvantage, perhaps, when you compare it to France or compare it to Germany. Those countries have a lightning rod sweet wine. Everybody who knows a little bit about wine knows about Sauterne. And then from there, you can compare other French sweet wines to Sauterne. Obviously, you've mentioned it 3 or 4 times. Germans have their Birnen-Auslese, talking Birnen-Auslese. People know. Italy perhaps doesn't have a central sweet focus like that.
We have just Asti, like popular sweet wines. Yeah. The other wines are very few production in different region. It's very difficult to focalize the production of the sweet wine in Italy. There are many good sweet wines. The wine of Giovanni Dri are fantastic, like the Torcolato. Torcolato, yes, fantastic. But there are too few to go to the market with a great image, like Sauterne or Auslese in Germany, Rheinhessen or in Mosel.
Wow, you asked some great questions. You gave us some great insights. We'd like to close with Lydia's got something that was in the New York Times that she wants to read to us. Please.
Yes, there was this article about Peppe Cervegnini. He is an author, a great author, writes for Corriere della Sera and writes also for the New York Times. And I have taken pieces of his article in the New York Times. It was in June 2015. The global success of Italian cooking dates from the early 20th century, where emigrating in droves, the Italians to Northern Europe and the United States opened restaurants and trattorias in their homes. Italians cooked the only kind of cooking they knew, home cooking. For centuries, the home has been a gastronomic workshop. Italian cooking is a popular art that bubbles up from below. Our temperate climate in Italy, from the Dolomites to the tiny islands of Lipari, gives us material of sublime quality. Since 1986, the slow food movement noted more than 250 procedias, or authentic artisanal food products in Italy, from lardo di colonnata to pork butts, onions, garlics, and so on. Italians may not be history's greater inventors of foodstuff, but we are unbeatable adopters. What about the tomato? Imported from America, it remained an ornamental plant for hundreds of years until Italians made it their signature ingredient. And coffee? It grows in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and was brought to Venice by the Turks. But it was espresso, an Italian name and style of consumption that conquered the world. And consider feeling. Food is emotional as well as nutrition. And we Italians know emotion. Italians, cooks, put the emphasis on empathy. Yeah.
I love this. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you all. Please have a round of applause for our great panel and for you. Remember, please, lunch at 1 o'clock on the second floor. Have a great day.
Thank you.